You're on the metal bar, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome all the way from Jersey, Bobby Blitz Ellsworth from Overkill ahead of the release of the brand new album Scorched. Bobby, how you doing?
An absolute pleasure to be here. Talking down under. Bobby Blitz from the great state of New Jersey here. Looking forward to the release of Scorch and looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you. I've been listening to this record. You guys have knocked it out of the park again, and I wonder how much the length of time it's taken to do this album. And obviously, no fault of your own with all the shit that we know is going on in the world in the last little while. But 4 years to deliver an Overkill album, I think, is a record. How did you find that process?
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, it was a great place of sanity to go to amongst the insanity. So I can't look at it as something that was negative. I think of it as more of the known amongst the unknown, the thing we were most comfortable with. So, I mean, for me, it was just, it was a great place to go with my head during that whole Peter pandemic era of craziness. This was not crazy. So, well, I think other people struggled with the pandemic and some didn't, and some struggled horribly. But for me, I had, this new record Scorched to complete my end with. And it was just, it was a blessing in disguise to be able to have it during such a weird time.
Did you find that you ended up writing differently because you had so much more time?
Well, sure. I mean, it was, you get influenced by the outside world, and the outside world was upside down. It was, walking on its hands and bouncing its head off of the fucking ground. And so, I noticed it about a few months in that it was more of a depressive kind of an approach to writing. There was no hanging out with friends. There was some things missing in my life. The dog had passed, for instance. My buddy, is now gone. And I thought to myself, fuck, I'm on my motorcycle. It's me. It's just me. So for sure, it affected it, and it became a little depressive. So my feeling was, hey, listen, once I recognized this, I started tearing it down and restarting, keeping a few pieces and then restarting and then doing it again and doing it again until it actually had a personality that I think, fit many of the 20 records we've done or the 19 records we've done prior to this.
Yeah, well, I was going to say your 20 records is a hell of an achievement, Bobby. And you keep doing it, and you keep surprising people. I mean, like I got the download from Nuclear Blast, open it up, Scorched first track in. I'm like, this should be called Face Melter. It just it just hit me, and I was just like, wow, this is just there's so much going on here. Such a fucking great album opener.
Something special about that. I think it really sets the tone for the record. It's more of a thrash slash rock kind of approach to writing. It's got a really memorable chorus, but it's got that guitar intro that just sets the tone for everything to follow. It's like listening to an era gone by in the present day with modern production. So my feeling was that was the ultimate opener for this. And even Didi, I mean, when he wrote those riffs, he had mock titled Scorched as opener. And when I was done with the whole thing and Scorched was the title of it, the boys were like, hey, great, why don't we call this a record? And I was like, I don't know. But, it was 4-1. So, I caved, like most American politicians.
It's interesting you said it had a bit of a rock feel to it, because that was one of the things I first thought when I listened to it. I went, I can hear almost an AC/DC influence in some of that, particularly that intro and then the bell tolling. I was just like, this is AC thrashy maybe a little bit, to open the album, and but it really grabbed me. It's a great opener. I mean, I know you said Didi had called it the opener from the start, but when he calls something he's working on the opener, does it always end up being the opener?
Yeah, I'm pretty much, because I think I get into that mindset. But man, that's a great pickup with the AC Thrashy, because when he sent me the original, it had these kind of background vocals that he just kept dropping in, where he did like 2 or 3 tracks of oh, and I was like, what is this, fucking Thunderstruck? It's like, I mean, really, And I called him. I'm like, why the fuck did you put that in my head? Well, now I can't get rid of it. But I think somewhere in there it kind of worked out between a balance between like what you said, AC thrashy and the thrash end of things, and a real kind of an overkill punch in the face opener, but still that rock and roll kind of I don't know if you call it imagery, but for sure something that reminds you of the past with regard to rock and roll. And ACDC is a great a great definition to put on a song like this.
Yeah, I mean, from your point of view as a vocalist, I mean, I know you've been doing this since what 1980, probably in your bedroom since a long time before that. But who do you think your vocal influences were growing up? Because I mean, I listen to a lot of Overkill stuff, and I hear some of your phraseology reminds me a bit of Lemmy, but then you also have some of your tones remind me a little bit of Brian Johnson as well. But you're obviously your own vocalist as well. You definitely when you hear it's Bobby.
Look, it's a great point. I mean, I'm obviously recognizable. I've always aspired to be a better singer, but I think the thing that made me was something you just mentioned. It's phrasing, and how I can put something in and sing almost like a drum beat.
Mm.
It's I can hit on the one or behind the one or in front of the one, and it's not as melodic as many great vocalists are. But the phrasing is kind of unique with regard to this. I don't sing over the top of everything and have it hang everywhere. I'm within what the music is. I start after and usually end before, a refrain does. So, I didn't really recognize it until, just a few years gone by. I was like, geez, it's really the phrasing for me. But I do aspire to sing better. And I think, even on this record, we started messing with the influences, of the past, the traditional heavy metal, the Priest, the Maiden, Maiden, Paul Diano. Oh my God, the Killers record. What a great record. So I started messing around with this stuff and I started pushing the parameters of that out. So I think it's the phrasing and always trying to be a better singer, always trying to make it a little bit better.
You're like a percussive vocalist.
Just a mess.
No, like percussive, like percussive. You're there. You're in sync with the rhythm section a lot of the time, and I really like that.
I thought you said Picasso, and I was like, Picasso. I'm not a genius.
Are you sure?
Percussive, yes, correct.
Yes, correct. Yeah. What about some of the lyric writing then that comes to this? Because I mean, I could be way off here, but obviously the first single, The Surgeon, I picked up. Maybe you're talking about Mengele, the Angel of Death, Wicked Place. I wasn't sure. I mean, I wasn't sure if that was about a prison or a place in your head. But I mean, how do you go about coming up with inspiration for lyric writing?
Oh, I mean, you never knew it was thrash metal until somebody gave it the title or the moniker of such. So there's always a pool that I choose from with regard to theme or direction, but it's always based on the present day. And The Surgeon was obviously not Mengele. It was more Dr. F. He was the old mask wearing cocksucker kind of thing. I mean, it's Fauci had the whole world paying homage to the Fauci. I mean, it was like Saint Anthony, and it seemed like such a ridiculous thing. And The Surgeon at first was such a depressive kind of a approach lyrically, but eventually, after the teardowns, like I told you earlier, became more of a pushback. It became more of a, we're a little bit sick of this, bro. I mean, if I could grab your face, I'd pull that mask right off of it and, squeeze your face and push you away. And I think that a big part of the rest of the world felt the same, that I think we were done giving up our freedoms. I think we were done giving them up for what the results were, of course. I mean, I think everybody played ball at first, but you don't need one man running the world. So Surgeon, for instance, is more about bloodletting and letting the infection out and moving forward. So if you take bloodletting and cross it with Anthony Fauci, I suppose that's it. I suppose it's a social way of looking at what those couple of years, just a few years behind us were.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Cool. And another one that I had to ask you about was "Twist of the Wick," because I know you like writing songs about kicking ass, and I don't think there's many more kick-ass movies of recent time than the John Wick series. So I did wonder if there was a tie in there.
No, not with John Wick. It's actually one of the series of movies I actually like, and I'm not usually into those kind of things. But I've always liked Keanu Reeves. But Twist of the Wick is it's an I don't know, it's kind of an old biker or race expression. I mean, this is the right hand. I
Yeah.
mean it's hard to say this, but here's the right hand. You if you're on the bike, you get the fuck out of there. You go. So the wick is so a twist of the wick is let's get the fuck out of here and fast.
Yeah. Right.
So just something with my I suppose my heritage or my longevity with loving motorcycles and riding the clubs, etc.
So it's pedal to the metal if you're in a car. It's twist of the wick if you're on a bike.
Yeah, twist that wick. Come on, twist that wick.
Twist the wick. Let's get the hell out of here. Hey, while I was listening to the record, I was going through and looking back at the catalog, and I noticed that I found about half a dozen different articles about Overkill, their entire catalog ranked from best album to worst album, and it was funny because I read like 3 of those things back to back, and every one was different. And opinions are like assholes. We've all got one. So they're always going to change. For example, Horoscope was number 1 on one guy's list, and the next one I read it was 10. But for you, how do you look back at your catalog? And is there something that stands out for you that you think this is my masterpiece, or is it all a moment in time?
Well, I think artists work on masterpiece, or in that realm. I think of myself more as a craftsman, and I'm only talking about myself, not the other guys. So I really don't, I don't bother myself with such. I mean, there's better records to me and worse records. It's usually based on production and not songwriting. When I think of a good record as compared to a bad record, because I want that record to sound great. I always think that every step is necessary to get to the next step. Even if the record was bad, I mean, it was necessary to say, I'll never do this again, or I will never repeat such a mistake. And again, that's me, not the other dudes. But the masterpieces, I don't know. I mean, I always look at Overkill in kind of chapters. The first one being with Bobby Gustafson, the first 4 records, and probably the greatest of that was Years of Decay. And then the next chapter started with Horoscope, which is a great record. Ironbound was a really killer release. 1997 From the Underground and Below, to me, a great release. And another Colin Richardson, who mixed Scorched, another production from him.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, that guy knows how to produce a metal record for sure. I mean, you talked about that production, rather than songwriting can be the make or break of an album. Is there an album in your catalog that you look back and go, I'd like a do-over? I'd love to do that again?
Sure. Relics. I think that was around 2006, 6 or 7. I'd like to hear the record I Hear Black, which is 1993, develop a little bit longer. I don't think it was a bad record. I think it was just that we didn't understand the songwriting. I mean, we'd just done Horoscope before that. Merrick Gant, Rob Canavino had joined the band for Horoscope. They wrote very little on Horoscope, but when we got to I Hear Black, they wanted to write. And we didn't want to, quell the whole band feeling. So we all wrote. And so I had to write with 3 different dudes. I wrote with Merritt, Rob, and Didi Verney. Didi handling the lion's share of the work. And I think that if it had a little bit more time, we could have connected a little bit better. That's the only thing I think about that record. And I think the production is a hair soft on it. But so Relics 2006 and I Hear Black 1993.
Scorched obviously is the brand new one, and that'll be top of the pile right now because it's fresh and there's so many great tracks on it. Actually, on Twist of the Wick, the Gregorian chants. Where did you find those monks in Jersey?
Bro, I'll tell you. I mean, I gotta tell you something. This was one of the hardest songs for me to finish, and the reason was because I was paying attention to it in sections. And what I had done was I wrote like a heavy metal chorus, a heavy metal pre-chorus, and I said, "This fucking thrash blast beat that Jason's doing, and this riff has got to be fucking perfect. It's got to be off the hook." So I worked on it in sections. And I kept working on that first section, and I thought I had it. And then I worked with this guy Johnny, and I, bro, just play it through. Let me hear it. When we got to the center section, I heard the monks and the Gregorian chant singing. I'm like, where in the fuck did this come from? It's like Dee Dee sang it like a month ago. It's like, we've been working on this song for a month. But between the church bells and the Gregorian chant, I was really impressed with
Yeah.
the idea. And he obviously had sent me something via email or text or Dropbox, and I just didn't pay any attention because my head was somewhere else. But he had done it with Derek Taylor. It was recorded by Michael Romeo in Symphony X, and they put it into a keyboard and just started messing with it, and they put that in there. And when I had heard the song and I thought I'd hit the verses, I'm like, okay, those verses, I got them finally. I was like, that is just great. So it was a great surprise for me, believe it or not. It had nothing to do with the writing of it. It was Dee Dee, Derek, and Michael Romeo.
Well, they did a great job, man. That really, was once again. I was in that song, and then I'm like, what the fuck? This is great, but I did not expect it. It was a great surprise.
Hey, fucking ditto, man. I was in a band. I didn't expect.
Bobby, thanks very much for talking to us, man. It's so good to chat to you about the new album, Scorched. Before